So you want to live a healthy life? I get it, so do I. That's why I'm here, that's why you're here, and you're going to want to stay here for this week's episode of the Alter Your Health podcast, your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. I'm your host, Dr. Benjamin Alter, and this week I'm very excited to bring you our guest, Jane Esselstyn. You might recognize the Esselstyn name because, yes, she is the daughter of Caldwell Esselstyn, who wrote the book Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease and has done the research at the Cleveland Clinic on preventing and reversing heart disease with diet, specifically a whole food plant-based diet. So Jane is no stranger to whole food plant-based diet and lifestyle. She's been on this path, so to speak, for decades, and not only is she healthy and strong in it, she is raising a family who's very much healthy and vital on this whole food plant-based diet and lifestyle. So we talk all about some social stressors and being on this sort of diet and lifestyle in our world today. We talk about raising a family on a whole food plant-based diet. We talk about reversing and preventing heart disease and Alzheimer's in women, which is a topic that Jane is particularly interested in these days. And in fact, she has an upcoming conference later in March on that topic. We talk about some go-to recipes, of course, because you might know Jane from her very awesome cookbook, the Engine 2 cookbook, which is just one of her cookbooks. She also wrote Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease cookbook with her mother, Anne. And she also wrote the recipes in Plant Strong and the 7-Day Rescue Diet with her brother, Rip. So we talk about all sorts of yummy stuff in this conversation. We talk about tips and recipes and ideas for going out to eat at restaurants and ideas for cooking in your own home, of course. So before we dive into this week's episode, I just want to remind new and old listeners to subscribe, rate, review this podcast, leave some comments, leave some feedback. It really does help me receive that feedback that allows me to continue growing and evolving this kind of content to meet your needs and desires. It also, of course, helps this kind of information be seen and absorbed by more people in the world. So if you do know people who would be touched and inspired by this kind of information, feel free to share. Also, at Alter Health, if you don't know, we have a weekly group coaching program that we've just kicked off. And this weekly group coaching program is intended to provide enriching, empowering information when it comes to whole food, plant-based nutrition, and other lifestyle tips and tricks to optimize your health. We also talk about mind-body medicine and cultivating this awareness between our thoughts and our feelings, and really achieving optimal health on all levels. So feel free to go to alter.health to learn more about that. Now let's get right into this with our guest, Jane Esselstyn. All right, Jane Esselstyn, welcome to the Alter Your Health podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, really happy that we've made the time to connect. And I know you've got such a cool family. We all know that. And I'm sure you've got a cool story, and I'd like to know a little bit more of that. So could you just start by telling us what it was like growing up with Dr. Esselstyn?
That was all I knew. So it wasn't really anything. He was just gone every day. He was a surgeon. So he was gone almost every morning when we all got going. Actually, no, we all swam. Growing up as swimmers, we were swimming at 5 a.m. So we would get up and then he would leave before we were back. Anyway, didn't see him in the morning and we'd see him at night for dinner. So we didn't, he just sort of had the typical dad comes home at night kind of thing. And he would try to get some exercise in and we would all be doing homework. And so fortunately it was before screens hijacked our attention and our lives and our minds. So we did all hear a lot about his curiosity that was growing in health and food as prevention for avoiding all these diseases that we now know are lifestyle related.
Mm.
So when we were younger, we kind of got exposed to a lot of that stuff just by osmosis of the home. And so by about, when I was 15, I actually moved to California. I didn't move to California. I lived for the summer in California in Mission Viejo with a family because I'm a swimmer. We all were swimmers. And I swam with the national champion team for a summer. And I became vegetarian because they had the most disgusting meat at their house. It was like, I don't know if you, maybe because you're from California, Laura Lynn, is it still there? It's like the generic brand in all the stores.
I don't know.
I think it was called, I don't even know, but it was just, the meat was so gross. Like they would get hamburger meat that it wasn't even red and white. It was just all orange. It was so much, it was
Like
so,
bologna or something.
it was just so much fat that it didn't have any,
Huh.
anyway, and that like it grossed out the 15-year-old self in me. And I stopped eating meat when I was in California. Thank God I was there, because that was where I first had beans. And so I came home from California and I was a vegetarian, which was a little different than my family at the time, but they rolled with it. And it happened to be kind of around the time my dad was shifting his mind about the power of food and nutrition, and it ended up being quite harmonious, this whole experience.
Wow. So you kind of had your own independent evolution thing going with food, and dad was doing his work and kind of came together.
Well, my little, I was spitting the ocean, if you will. Like, oh yeah, I'll go this way, with the way he's moving. So it made sense. But it was not, we didn't really influence each other at all. But it ended up being harmonious, like I said.
And how old were you when all of his research was going on? And at that time, did things change in your household?
Yes, that's a good question. My dad started, I think, moving this direction around just thought-wise and in our home, because he didn't want to ask anything of his patients that he wasn't going to be able to do himself. Like I always say, it was a very Gandhian approach. Like, I'm not going to ask this of you if I can't do it myself. And I want to get the year right, but I think it was like 1981, 82. He was really talking about this stuff. And then 83, 84, it started to happen at home. And then 85, he had his research starting. He had his first 20 some patients ready to go. So I was actually just out of high school, starting college, and not home for all of that. I remember calling home when my younger brother said, "It's kind of weird around here, Jane. We're not eating any more meat, dairy, sugar, fat, oil, salt." He just listed all this stuff, and I was like, "Wait, what's going on? What are you guys doing?" And I said the typical question, "Well, then what are you guys eating?" And he was like, "Well, you're a vegetarian. You kind of know. Like, we're just, And I was just decided to go when we all moved home then in the summer out of college, and it was fine. I mean, you just figure out what to eat, and it's not a problem. If it wasn't easy, it wouldn't work, and it wouldn't. We wouldn't still be doing it.
So when all that change was happening with him and within the research, was the family? It seems like the family was pretty much on board with all of the change of eating habits in the household, even though you were out of the house. You that was the case.
Yeah, I think because he kind of started pounding theory into us, the thoughts of it, kind of like some sort of weird religion. So we all sort of adopted it without much resistance. We were not completely compliant, like we were heart disease patients, or actually he started with breast cancer patients, but we definitely, it was easy to go, okay, we're not going to eat meat. I mean, one brother he was at Yale at the time, and I just say this because they had a horrible strike in the eating
cafeteria or something.
Yeah, the dining halls. There you go.
Yeah.
And so all these students were having to go to like McDonald's or whatever they could find on campus, and, ice cream parlors and, what's available on a campus, especially in the early 80s. So he had a toaster oven and they would make potatoes and sweet potatoes. And just in his dorm, he kind of, you don't have a fridge for meat and cheese and stuff. So it was funny how it worked. And our other brother was in school in Texas, and Rip, maybe you've heard of Rip.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kinds of, great bean burritos and just things that were easy to go to. If you're not going to eat meat, well, then I'm going to have a bean burrito, or I'm going to do a bean chili, or all that stuff. And anyway, so we all did sort of adopt the vegetarian aspect of it. And out of the gate, it was actually a no fat diet. And so no fat dairy was out there. And then we started learning more about dairy, and then dairy off the, out of the way. But it was not so hard, actually.
Yeah, well, I imagine because, like we were talking about before we started recording, the community aspect is so important. And it seems like from the get-go, your family had that going on, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, we kind of had it at home with each other, but fewer and fewer and fewer invitations to go to people's house for dinner. Like we have yet to really be invited to someone's house for dinner with confidence, unless they're plant-based eaters who are like, "Hey, come try this," and that's quite rare. But the sense of community kind of was there with ourselves. But honestly, I think when you're a zealot about this stuff and you come charging in the room saying, you're going to die if you eat that, you're going to get da-da-da-da, you don't make any friends. And I think I kind of cut my teeth on how to talk about this stuff in the 80s. And, if you come in too strong, people are like, bye. And they just kind of, so it didn't have a lot of community, I'd say, necessarily. I know I didn't feel like that. Some friends would jolly along oh yeah, Jane, I'll come have some oatmeal with you, or I'll make a cheeseless pizza with you, and not really enjoy it. But things have grown to be quite big as far as community and understanding and support and ease, availability, and so many stores have food ready to go, like the sushi rolls, just the rice sushi rolls. Boom. It's so easy now.
Yeah. As I always say, there's no excuses to not be eating whole food, plant-based. And, maybe there never has been, but now there's certainly not. And you talked about, you learned early about not being overzealous when it came to, demonstrating this way of living and eating amongst your community. I feel like a lot of the world now is really getting amped up from like a vegan perspective, and for good reason, just feeling good and wanting to make good in the world. I'm curious if you have any words of wisdom or advice given your experience. It sounds like that might not be the most effective way of approaching the situation and being more understanding and compassionate towards people. Yeah,
I think that it so much depends on like who you are, who you're with, who you're talking to, what their curiosity level, all that stuff. So I'm thinking about, like, I was thinking back in college when I would come, into the dining hall to sit with my friends. I swam from Michigan, so I would sit down with my tray and I'd just be like, and no one wants to hear that. They're making their own choices. They're eating. They're tired. They've been swimming all day, just like I have, and you just don't make good connections that way. I have found if you just come hard charging, if people are curious and they want to know more and they have questions, then I often say, if you really want me to talk about food, it trips a wire in me, and I kind of get going, and I might not stop. So if you really want to hear a lot from me, I'm willing to talk about it. If not, let's just move on to talking about anything else. So that's kind of my take. And so often, these days when we're with people, it's because we're at an event that we're attending, or that maybe we're hosting, or we're part of a group going to something. And that is because we're so far along in this movement, we're talking about food, and it's fine, and it's not a big deal anymore. But when we're interfacing with people who are not plant-based or not part of the whole, American College of Lifestyle Medicine pushing for this sort of lifestyle. I just feel like it's like I'm selling someone a religion. Like people are not willing to change unless they're open to it and want to hear about it. And sometimes it's because something's happened to them, like they've had a heart attack, or they've had a brush up against some other diagnosis, or someone they know or love has, and then they'll be open to it and they want to hear about it. So I'm not quite saying only preach to the choir. I'm not saying that, but when you find somebody who is interested, go, let it be known. And also being a living example is amazing. My mom and dad live next door. I could just that way. And every day they're active, they're sharp as tacks. They just like change their whole, from one cable system or something spectrum to direct TV or opposite. They switch something up and say all these new remotes, they got to figure out how things work. And, it's challenging for me to figure out. Like it's confusing. And for all these challenges. And then my mom will go off to yoga with me, and there she is, like warrior 1, 2, 3, this, that, Vipassana, up and down, she's non-stop. And bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, running around, shoveling snow. We have a ton of snow here right now. They are such living examples of this. And so people often say to me, are you guys sisters, or are you mother-daughter? And on our YouTube channel, I don't know if you've seen our YouTube channel.
Of course, yeah.
We have a channel, and people say, oh my God, the Esselstyn twins, this is so exciting. And instead of being sort of insulted by that, which my kids are like, oh, Mommy, that's sort of insulting. And I'm like, it's not. I've got white hair because I'm not going to dye it or whatever, streak it or tweak it. But if I can look like Anne when I'm 83, I'll be thrilled. And it sounds like I'm on my way. So
yes.
they're just living examples of that, and the way they feel, the way that they are still so involved with their own lives and their own mission, their own purpose and their own passion, and they're involved with their grandchildren's lives. And there's 20 of us in our family, and they are FaceTiming with this person, going, what's happening with her? How was that grade? How did you do in that paper? How'd you do in that? That someone was just racing in the Harvard stadium steps. How'd it go? How many steps did you do? And they're current with everything happening with their family, and it's not burdensome. It's exciting, and that's the example that I think tweaks curiosity with people. And I hope that can be something that my husband and I can live for our kids, or show to our kids.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful message to just really, for lack of a better trite saying, but be the change and just live the example rather than preaching about this or that being the way to be. Just be it and do it. Live your life and allow that to inspire others.
Just like Gandhi said, we got a lot of Gandhi coming up. I love that.
Yeah. It's trite, but it's powerful for sure. Well, I'm curious. I know you've got, this wonderful family that's all on the same page, and you have your children. I'm curious if you've faced any struggles in raising your family in this lifestyle. Are your children on board? Like,
that's a great question. We have 3 kids, and 2 are just in college right now, sophomore and a freshman, and our youngest you saw earlier, she's in high school. And they are all plant-based eaters, and they're trying to make their way at their colleges doing so. And luckily colleges are now open to vegan, so things are a little bit greasy sometimes, like too greasy to be appealing, but sometimes greasy to be very appealing. But that would be the one hurdle, I think, is that the vegan junk food is out there, but they're all plant-based. And growing up, when they were little, they never had meat, they never drank milk. And I always tell the story about, we went to this restaurant and they served us bread at first, and I'm sure the bread had all kinds of junk in it and white bread, but the kids were like, yay, and we're like, go ahead and have your bread. And they were like, oh, and they gave us chocolates. And my husband and I just laughed because it wasn't chocolate. They were little golden pats of butter. But the kids didn't know that butter they didn't know what butter was, or that it was a gold packet. So Anyway, that was just funny to be like, oh my gosh, it's not a little thing of chocolate, it's butter. Um, but
That's a really funny one. I mean, that's like, yeah, I think that for the most part, so many people see a little gold packet and it's like, oh, thanks for the butter. But
no,
how
yeah,
weird is that, that a little thing of butter comes in a gold packet? Like, how did that become a thing, you know?
yeah, but our kids growing up, then we really had them make their own way through elementary school. Like they went to a school where they couldn't bring lunch, they couldn't bring stuff into school, for whatever allergy reasons and whatnot. So they would have to make their way through what the school had, and the school had great stuff, like a cereal bar, look, get a bowl of Cheerios or a bowl of cornflakes or whatever, and a fruit bar and a salad bar and a hot bar, and they would come home and they will have had cheese pizza. They will have had just a hot dog bun with ketchup in it only. Like no hot dog, just the bun. And we're like, all right, you're making your way. That's what we have to do in the world too. It's awful
Wow.
sometimes, isn't it? So they had to make their way. And sometimes they would have, I think they would dabble in like cheese, and they'd have a big piece of cake or something one day, or if it's at someone's birthday or at school. And they just kind of figure out, how do you feel? How did you like that? And, you know, my son, one time for his birthday, instead of bringing in like the typical cupcakes and things, he's like, can you bring in something that's really like, that I think is great? Because he does not like sweets and stuff. He's like, I really like bananas, and I really like root beer. So in fourth grade, I brought in the Virgil's root beer, like that comes like with carrying a 6-pack. It comes in a,
Uh-huh.
what is it called, the little paper or cardboard.
A 6-pack.
Yeah, the thick container.
Yeah.
So I walk into school, like I feel like I'm walking to like a frat party or something, with all these bananas over my shoulder and all this Virgil root beer, and the kids were all cracking open and doing cheers and like, yeah, it's Evan's birthday. Anyway, root beer and bananas was a hilarious treat to have, and it's kind of plant-based, I guess. But yeah, so they've made their way through junk food and cheese pizza, but just avoiding meat and milk along the way. But they are all plant-based, and because we started that way, it is a different issue. Everyone says, "Oh, Jane, tell me how you helped your kids transition from being a standard American diet to plant-based." And I'm like, "Well, we didn't. I did that. I had to do that back in the '80s in the University of Michigan dining hall that was, you can imagine. And that's, I had grape nuts and water with, yucky frozen raspberries on them. But
Yeah. So it sounds like there wasn't a lot of force feeding. You weren't, force feeding children. You weren't,
no,
finish your broccoli and.
They were picky eaters. We would have, I didn't go into the detail, but basically we'd have we felt like Chipotle style every night. My husband and I would have, the grain and the greens and the beans and the this and the that and the toppings and the sauce and the roasted vegetables and the dressing, and the kids would have the rice, and that's it. Or the rice and she would have beans, or the rice and beans. This kid liked also to have some slices of tomato, or just, you never know who would like what. But now they all take everything, and it was just this exposure to it, not forcing them all the time, but they slowly started to do it themselves. And they've been hearing this message in surround sound stereo their whole life. Going over to their grandparents' house is not like having warm chocolate chip cookies. It's like having white bean waffle.
Whoa, that sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, but like as a 9-year-old with your friends, you're like, we are not going to go to my grandparents' house to eat. No. You never know what they'll have. Some stew on the stove that just smells like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, split pea, and there's some sauerkraut, and oh, what is that? And they're like, oh, but now they love it.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I think that's another great example is, we all come into this in our own way, and there's no forcing. I mean, it doesn't work that way.
No.
It doesn't work that way. So I know that you've got that event coming up around heart disease and Alzheimer's for women, prevent and reverse heart disease and Alzheimer's for women. Could you talk a little bit about how you've come into just focusing on women's health and women's prevention? I mean, obviously you're a woman, but
No,
yeah,
that's a good question. And it's not women's health, which is a tricky word play in a way. And I'm careful not to say women's health, because women's health does mean like, below the belt.
gynecological stuff. Yeah.
So, and that's not really what my focus is, although I'm so supportive of all that. Woo, woo.
Yeah.
And when I have not been writing my cookbooks and doing research and whatever, working in the plant-based realm, I do a small bit of middle school sex ed teaching. So I'm beyond supportive of people knowing everything about how their bodies work, just like with food.
Mm-hmm.
Information, oh my gosh, my two guidelines: informed decision-making and preparatory guidance, and informed decision-making with food, and as yourself growing into being a sexual being. Okay, so back to the women's thing. As I sort of was coming up out of having three little kids, three under the age of 3, is when a lot of these conferences started happening and these events around plant-based eating. So roughly in the early 2000s, or late 2000s, 2009, 10. And I would go to all these events, and it was no one was offensive to me in any way, but it felt like it was the white man, white-haired, white guy show. Mm-hmm. And I was like, there's so many women, and there's so many women who are not have white hair, and so many women who are doing all kinds of research, and they're not all just white people. And I just thought, I've got to get more women, the variety show of women up and out there, to share this message, to connect with more people. Because women, as my husband mentioned to you earlier today, women are sort of the change agents of society, not necessarily because they know that, but just because they are out there thinking and worrying and cooking and preparing and choosing and serving and nurturing and caring for and connecting and talking. And I mean, men are as well. Men are great. I have a great man that I'm married to right there, and I've got a great son and 3 great brothers and a great dad. But women are just, they're pretty great in what they do and what they can do and what they offer. So I just said, I am a little tired of all this. I'm just going to say this is for women. I have men who present at my event, but it's over half women almost all the time. And if I can get a woman who's not just a white woman, I hate to say it like that, but I want to have the variety show. Hooray.
Cool.
And like the next speakers I have are Aisha and Dean Sherazai. They're a wonderful couple from California.
Yeah, Loma Linda, yeah.
Exactly. They're coming to our event, and they've got so much to say, and I want to hear as much from Dean as I do from Aisha. So I'm excited for both of them. But so I chose women. I also am the only girl in my family. Like, I have 3 brothers, and I've been, kicking, fighting, screaming for my own space and my own voice for 53 years. And it's fine. And they're all so supportive of this whole effort for women. And I think that oddly, they always have been supportive of women, but I don't think people always know how to do that, offer that. Mm-hmm. And I get so many emails saying, hey, my husband really wants to come. And I'm like, oh my gosh, bring him. We have so many strong, beautiful men coming to our event, and your husband's going to be one of them. And I can't wait to see him and meet him. And then, so speaking of women, because in this whole lifestyle, plant-based lifestyle, preventative lifestyle, there's so much going on, there's so much information that we come to a saturation point in information, and we have to just figure out what's next. Like, okay, I've read all these books, I've listened to all these podcasts, I've tried all the recipes. What's next? Like, what's next? I want to go. Like, I've been a freshman, I've been a sophomore, I've been a junior. Like, I'm senior. What's next? What's next? So what I truly feel like it's next is just, it's living it. It's just trusting that you've got it and living that, and trying to find a community of friends, and it be they on Facebook, or if they're in your neighborhood or wherever, that is just the way that we're going to move forward, is just keeping the community going however we can in this day and age. So I'm having a camp for women, June 6th to 9th, on the beautiful Kenyon College campus. It's in sort of central Ohio. And it is just going to be camp activities, running around, playing games, swim party, hiking, goofy arts and crafts. We have some classes, improv, fun things, like just camp. And we're not going to do any lecturing, sitting on our patooties talking about plant-based diet and its prevention and we're just going to live it. 3D
Awesome.
it. 3D.
Yeah, that sounds so great. I think I really love how that's the graduation step. It's like, all right, we got all this information. Like, yeah, it reminds me of, I think that a lot of us have this seeker mentality where we're always trying to find some supreme answer, but it's like sometimes we just need to take action, put one step in front of the other, and just like live our lives and let the wisdom come to us rather than seek it out.
You know what? Yeah. I had a neighbor who died a while ago, but he used to say, doing does it.
I mean, does it? Yeah. I mean, what else does it? Yeah.
Doing does it. And for some things, that's the truth. Some things, it's not the thing to do, but
Yeah.
doing does it. And that's what it is here in the plant-based.
Yeah. So when it comes to, women's heart disease and Alzheimer's, because are you also discussing the research when it comes to women's heart disease and Alzheimer's? Because I know a lot of, I would say that for me, I presume, I haven't looked at the data in a while, but more men get heart attacks than women, correct? Or is that not true?
I think we're pretty much tied there. And
Oh,
one, you know what the ratio is for women who will have heart disease or who have heart disease? One
one
out
in
of,
three.
yeah, 1 out of 3.
Yeah.
So we're kind of matching the men, if not maybe a little bit ahead of them. But don't no one quote me on that. No emails for him on that. No. Just I know that women are 1 out of 3,
Yeah.
and do you know what the ratio is of people with Alzheimer's disease?
No, I know that that's a growing number too, though.
For women, 2/3 of all people with Alzheimer's are women.
Yeah. So are there any
We're out there.
theories?
We're
Yeah.
all, well, we live longer maybe, but we also um, don't always put our wellness and our care of ourselves first as primary. And as you know, as you've been talking about, so many of these things, and just to use the share's eyes, they have a wonderful acronym called Neuro, which is nutrition is the most important thing. And women are in the majority of the people in the world preparing food, selecting food, preparing food, making food, serving food. Majority are women. Plenty of amazing, beautiful men, and actually maybe not so happy about it, men make food. Don't get me wrong. But the majority are women. Nutrition's a big deal. Exercise, which is something that we all would love to have the time and the space to do every day. It's hard for people, especially if they're doing things like having to make food for their family and shop and prep, and that's the time suck. And so NEU, unwinding. To unwind is incredibly important, and to have time and space to unwind when you're having to think about preparing this and that and cleaning up and doing whatever else, what might be going on, or they're going to bring home the bacon. If it lands on women, it just, again, they're getting squeezed out of there. Rest, to get enough rest every day. Some people think they do great with their whatever, less than 6 hours a night. I'm not going to tell anybody how much to get, but I know I like to get at least 8 hours of sleep if I can, if my body will stay in sleep. And that's hard to do if you've got like people you're taking care of, either older family members or younger, kiddos. And I mean, I know my ear is wired. I will hear our kids in the middle of the night way before my husband will. I don't know what that is, but I think it's just like my smell is so much stronger. Like I'll smell something. He's like, "What are you talking? Like something's on fire." He's like, "No. Oh, something is on fire." Like it's just your senses are wired to protect your little village. And so I know rest is harder, and then Optimize means, to do what you can to grow and to adventure out into your world. If it's with community and connections, and I mean, that's again time and luxury, and not all people can do that, especially if they're tied to the non-optional tasks of the day, which women tend to be tied to more so than men. And I'm all for equality. I'm not pounding on a feminist drum loudly or a masculinist drum loudly, just equal ideal, because then everyone gets a chance to do some of that exercise and extra rest or unwinding or optimizing their life. Those are all the Sherzai's. Those are the Sherzai's brand, their words.
Right.
But it's a nice. It's able to Neuro. Neuro. It's easy to keep in your mind.
Yeah, I love that acronym, and it does kind of point out where, women might be deficient in all of their caretaking duties, responsibilities.
And caretaking, I think, is a great kind word, but it's almost like the non-optionals. Like, we need to eat and we need to be clean, or somewhat uncluttered, and dishes and dirt and whatever. But a lot of that it's not optional, so it's got to be done ideally equally.
Kind of shifting topics, we spoke a little bit earlier about social pressures and like going out to eat, and sometimes you're just eating a hot dog bun with ketchup in it. Hopefully not. But I'm curious if you have if you've acquired any wisdom when it comes to dealing with our society and being out in the world while being in integrity with your values and your choices. And, when it comes to maybe eating at a restaurant that doesn't have really great plant-based options, or going to a party or going to grandma's house who makes a big roast or something, like, how do you like to navigate these situations? But maybe you're not really faced with them, but for those who are.
I think that just you asking this question is great, because you're thinking ahead, and I think it's not to be too Boy Scouty about it, but just a little bit of preparation is amazing. And people always say, "Well, Jane, like, what do you have that's like a good for your kids, like a snack, like a single serve option?" And I'm like, a single serving option that's prepackaged and wrapped and has enough water and fiber and everything. Mother Nature's got your back. Single serving, plenty of water, plenty of fiber, and all this stuff. Mother Nature's totally got your back. And like yesterday, I sat down. I was doing I was on a conference call, and I had on mute, and I ate I think a whole bag of clementines. Those little clementine things.
Right.
I think I had probably 12. I mean, I probably like equivalent to probably having like 4 or 5 oranges, but still, like, whoa! They were so easy and so sweet. They were the perfect sweetness and moist. Anyway, there you go. I know I was home, I wasn't traveling, but the point is, those things can go anywhere, and you can have as many as you want or not, and they can bounce around the bottom of your backpack and survive it, no problem. So if we're going on a car trip somewhere, and I know that we're not going to have food for a while, I'll tons of fruit. We'll bring whatever sort of, a bag of bread and peanut butter and jelly for the kids, and off we go. If we're gonna be gone for a while, we're probably going someplace we know where we're gonna be able to eat okay. We're not going to, a tour of the barbecue of the South. Like, we wouldn't do that unless we knew they had portobello's there. But just thinking ahead a little bit can get you through that afternoon or that evening, that if you fall off the wagon and trip a wire, then you're off into the land of yucky food for 6 weeks because you tripped your wire. And friends, just, they kind of know who we are, and we help cook a lot with people if we're at their house or staying with them for a while. But I think going out to dinner or going to grandma's house, I would pre-feed. I pre-feed a lot. I eat before. I'm not like going insane. So then you're fine if you end up having a little bit of the garnish underneath if you're eating the kale leaves out from underneath all the other things. Because you usually can find something, even if it's just a side dish, like the mushrooms that were steamed and put on there for garnishing. I'll just wait till everyone has a few mushrooms, and I'll take the whole thing or whatever. But I would pre-feed, be prepared, and I really find that I can find something almost anywhere. Places have, I mean, not in McDonald's. You're kind of stuck, and you can buy one of those salad things, but that's not the best. Many places these days, like airports, have Starbucks that have oatmeal. You've got places that have build your own burrito, and yes, they have like the 6 of their samples, like the meat lover, and then they have the pork one and a chicken one and a this one. And you can say, you know what, I'm just gonna have some rice and the beans, and it's kind of build my own thing here. And they're like, oh yeah, no problem. I mean, they are so flexible in what they'll do. You don't have to stick to that guideline. Some people in my family hate how I talk to people and ask for different options. They're like cringing, Mommy, no. And then after I go, they're like, oh, I'll have the same thing.
You paved the way.
How can you complain about me, muscling my way through, and then you're just come right behind me? Oh, I'll get the same thing. But you can make your way. Some places, if they're stubborn about it, just say, no, that's fine. I'm going to go somewhere else. But you can always find steamed rice or vegetables or beans. Ideally, they're just going to be cooked in water, or hopefully not some sort of meat broth. But it's not as hard as we think.
Yeah, that's really the truth. It's not as hard as a lot of us, a lot of us consider, the worst case scenario, and it's never that bad. And I think that is really important to remember, that it is okay to ask for what you want. And our world today, for the most part, is very accommodating. And I think I personally think as we ask for what we want, like we were talking about earlier, we are the change, and we are, just living it. And we might trigger curiosity in some people. Oh, that person just had a rice and bean burrito and they looked pretty healthy. Maybe I'll try that next time. Hey, so that good advice. And in your home, presuming that you do a lot of cooking, you and your family, of course, you eat at home a lot, I presume, as most healthy families do. What are your go-to recipes? Because I know that I've got I've got a lot of recipe books like this one.
That's upside down and backwards. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a lot of beautiful recipe books like those ones.
These are all books over here. You probably can't see, but all these shelves are cookbooks.
Cool. Yeah. So,
we all have our go-to. We have X number of recipes that we go to.
Yeah. I find that when it comes down to it, I've got all these recipe books and they're all very inspiring and promote creativity. And I like diving in every once in a while. But when it comes down to it, I'm usually making like the same 4 or 5 things a lot of the time.
What do you make a lot of?
Well, I'm asking you, but when it comes to me,
I'm asking you.
All right. Well, for me, last night we made one staple dish, which was like we slice potatoes and roast the potatoes, and then just make a stir fry veggie thing with some beans. And it's like ends up being a nacho kind of thing with some pico de gallo and avocado. And
that's a go-to. That sounds like a
well, that's a little bit more of a exotic recipe, I guess. But I guess the go-to is really just like, let's face it, steamed potatoes and like broccoli and beans, and like if I'm really just want to do minimal work in the kitchen, it's just simple stuff like that. But yeah, I'm curious what if you're always doing creative things in the kitchen, or are there kind of a recycled go-to stuff?
We're human, totally human. Yeah. And so you say your go-to is like potatoes and stuff, but our go-to, I'd say, is without a doubt rice and beans. And lately, I don't know. Oh, here it is. My husband's been cooking. We got this great bean pot.
I think I saw that on Instagram. It's beautiful.
It's this beautiful pot. My husband's been cooking beans in it like crazy, and they make it. It's so interesting how well it works, and how, I don't know, it just feels it gets you more excited about beans. It's the same beans, like not same beans. We eat black beans, pinto beans. They have these big Christmas beans, or we have these butter beans, or there's red beans, all kinds of beans, but we eat a lot of canned beans a lot too. But rice and beans are our absolute foundation. And then with that, we put maybe we'll put some medallions of sweet potato that we made even in the microwave, just so that it's, soft, warm, stir it all in. Our daughter loves guacamole, so we have some guacamole with her for sure. That's way, it brings her to the table and makes her like things a lot more.
Oh, avocado, everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah, and then all kinds of, we've got a ton of arugula and kale right now, but we had a lot of spinach the other day. So we'll put it under, we'll put it on top, we'll chop it up, we'll massage it, however you can get the greens in there. And then someone brought by some spicy sprouts. So we'll put that on top of the rice and beans one night, or whatever beans, and it's always brown rice. And we might change it up and have it, quinoa and beans one night or something.
Right.
We do a lot of bowls, and our bowls have really what sounds like you eat and what we eat. And it's either a sweet potato, a white potato, little teeny potatoes. We'll have 1,000 little potatoes that my husband roasts them, and then we make some sort of, there's all different kinds of sauces. I mean, sauces are my jam. Like that, we realized, and think in the middle of cooking this book more than any book, when making this Engine 2 cookbook, I realized sauces, oh my gosh, when you have sauces down, you can eat anything because it gives such spark to everything. Like all these, like this.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, you could make 6 bowls and put 6 different sauces on each bowl, and you change it up totally. Yeah.
The teriyaki tofu. This is the quinoa bowl with this Ecuadorian sauce, and then the polenta with this sort of Southwest pico sauce, and then a lightning bowl with this great sort of lime and jalapeno acidity with a little balance of sweet in it. This other sauce, and I'm sitting here reading much from my husband's like, never read from your own cookbook, Jane. It just seems too much. But the sauces I'm trying to get a picture of the sauces, because they really did. He said it one night. He's like, all the sauces, salsas, and spreads we make the difference. It makes us be able to eat this way, because you're endlessly keeping your tongue occupied. I mean, your tongue is like this ADD creature, and you have to just make it happy.
Right. Of course, once it's cleansed and detoxed or whatever from all the, artificial flavors and sweeteners. Wow, look at that. It's beautiful.
That's I call this my humai, my many hummuses.
Humai. I love it. Yeah. Awesome. So it sounds like things are pretty simple in the Esselstyn household in terms of.
Yeah, I mean, I to be honest, we vary it up. We have a wonderful teriyaki sauce that we make from the Engine 2 cookbook. So we'll have a lot of that sauce, and then it'll go onto soba noodles, or it'll go onto rice. It'll go on with other. You can use that for various nights. And we've got kale sauces, walnut sauces, beet sauces, all these different things. So it changes the sort of the feel of it. Brian makes some great soups, and he makes a great lasagna, which is actually lasagna from the Engine 2 book. It's Brian's recipe is the one that Rip has in the book. So
oh, cool.
It's been a winner all along.
Recipe trade. Nice. Yeah. And how about any recipes that you love, or foods that you love to serve non-plant-based, non-vegan people, to kind of satisfy them while also, satisfying yourself, I should say?
Yeah, there's a it's a whole bunch.
I mean, all of those, like you said, just rice and beans pretty much satisfies anyone. I don't know anyone who doesn't have a bowl of rice and beans and veggies who's like, where's the beef?
Yeah, so that's great. But the teriyaki tofu one, I have found, when our kids bring friends home from college, we'll have a teriyaki tofu with this lo mein noodle sauce version, plant-based version that we have. That really is a crowd pleaser. Cool. And there's certain hors d'oeuvres and stuff we have, like smoky little devils, or this stacked polentas, and Brian makes a great chili, and we have that quite often. That's a staple, I'd say. And those things, like you said, no one would be like, where's the beef for this chili or this?
Yeah. You just have to give them enough. You just have to give them
And
enough.
we eat a ton. We eat a ton of food. A ton of food.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's a joy, and we didn't realize how much a priority it was. We went to our friends, some friends of ours had us over recently, and it was so interesting. Their house is beautiful and their lives are wonderfully committed and complex and political and on and on and on. And like they were serving the soup and like their ladle was broken. And I was thinking like, how can you have a broken ladle? But then again, like they're thinking, how come she's not canvassing for votes? You know? And I'm like, wait, it's just a matter of where we put our priorities. Like I want a ladle that works, and they want to canvass for votes. And
yeah. I mean,
not realize what priority our kitchen was. And our kitchen isn't even that snazzy. I mean, wow.
yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, we all put our priorities in different places, and it's not a bad or wrong thing, but sometimes we gotta I think the message is, of course, we gotta make room for nourishing ourselves. And I'm curious if you are aware of any dietary myths out there that you really want to see put an end to. If there's like one or two things that people are saying that it's like, that, wake up, people, smell the kale.
Something that's actually bothering me lately is that this whole plant-based movement, is happening, and I am furious to see the term plant-based being hijacked by people who say, oh, plant-based diet means that you're eating primarily plants. So you have a small bit of chicken, you have a small bit and I'm like, stop it! Plant-based diet means you eat plant-based diet only plants. Makes me furious. It's because they're basically repackaging the American Heart Association. The American, they're not all these diets have not moved the needle at all. But a whole food plant-based diet is exactly that. So that I've been frustrated to see happen. And it's just a hijacking of this term that's this new term, and it's this clean, lean, Mother Nature only term. So that has been frustrating to see. And also the whole movement of coconut oils creeping into people's diets. And it is just such a scary ingredient to include in your food. Like it's,
just,
I know Harvard called it poison, and that, I mean, it's not you're not going to like take a spoonful and die. It's insidious, and it's never been welcomed into food, and companies didn't use it until, hydrogenated oil got kicked off the block, and in came coconut oil, because it's just so much worse. They never went to it in the first place.
Could you just for a minute or two, without getting too nitty gritty, could you explain why coconut oil is so not good?
It is, butter and lard are like 68-69% saturated fat. Coconut oil is 92% saturated fat. You might get emails saying, but 2/3 of it is long chain. Just bleh. You open up a jar of stuff and try to get it off your hands. You cannot get it off your vessels. You cannot get it out of your intramyocellular lipid storage spaces in type 2 diabetes. You cannot get it out of your brain. Just don't go there. Just don't go there.
Not even not even the MCT stuff and the yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, it's crazy how these things
use it on your skin. It's a great natural lubricant, if you will, for your skin and other places. My husband often compares like coconut oil to like organic cigarettes. Like, who are you kidding?
Hey, that's a powerful comparison. Yeah, it's crazy how these things just weave their way into the health food aisle.
No, and you ask anybody seriously, like, when did coconut oil come on the scene for you? And they're like, oh, about 5, 7, 8 years ago. And that's when hydrogenated oils were kicked off, because they are so bad for our health. And then in comes something that's even worse, or arguably is worse.
Yeah, It's good to hear again, be refreshed that this is such a new thing, the coconut oil thing. It's like, wow, crazy.
You're too
So
young.
yeah.
You're probably in high school when it came out, but
Yeah.
it was never in the food supply. It was never in the food supply the way that it is now. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
you
it is.
can coconut might be occasionally in things, but it was not ubiquitous like it is.
Yeah. And on the other side of the spectrum, what are some foods that you think like absolutely everybody should be eating every day for optimal health that maybe people are glancing over or not getting enough of? What do you see as being like the real staple that everyone should just be putting into their mouth more?
Um, Definitely greens, definitely fruit, definitely, veggies. And some people have a hard time with beans or lentils, but choose one or the other. If you're having a hard time, try blending it in like a hummus type texture. It could just be the shape of the bean, being intact. It's hard on your body. Because people who say, I don't like beans, often like hummus, and they don't realize that hummus is, I mean,
Hmm.
they maybe know it's beans, but it's because it's been,
Hmm.
pureed. And 100% whole grains. And if you don't like, I mean, I'm not saying to eat wheat. If that's your thing, don't eat it. I mean, that's it's not your thing. But quinoa might be, or barley, or polenta, or farro, and there's so many great other options out there. But greens, beans, for sure.
Awesome. Well, Jane, I know that you are with us very often in our kitchen
There you go.
via the cookbook, and I know that you're touching a lot of people's lives through your inspiration recipes and YouTube videos and all the fun stuff. So thanks for doing that, and thanks for being here and sharing this conversation.
Well, Benjamin, thank you very much. Fun to talk to you.
Yeah, and yeah, and obviously people can learn more about who you are and what you're doing if they're not already aware. Your website again?
JaneEsselstyn.com.
Of course. And upcoming events and stuff are there, I presume.
Yes. We got a calendar of events, and the camp has its own little link because we're so excited about the camps. And thanks again.
Yeah,
See you.
and I know you're on Instagram as well, so that's the fun one. The most social of our social medias.
Yes. And that's just Jane Esselstyn. I think I'm _RN on that one.
Cool.
And that's that.
All right, Jane. Well, thanks again, and peace and love. Until next time.
Peace and love. Thank you. How do you plants? Peace, love, plants. I don't know.